Previously, on part one of our interview with Alan fucking Greenfield.
I'm Alan fucking Greenfield. I think all Nazis are douchebags, but
Absolutely.
it must have an esoteric meaning available only to high initiates.
You hear
People
that,
ask-
Terry Wrist? You're on notice.
Now you're going to hear from like 17 people claiming to be Terry Wrist.
Wonderful.
You're claiming to be Terry Wrist. Leave a comment.
Terry, if you're out there, before you die, say you're not me, okay? This is the book that caused the most suffering since Secret Cipher the Euphonauts, third volume of the Secret Cipher trilogy. I am not a Teflon man. But the amount of trouble that I've had saying any of these things has been, in the relative order of things, not bad. But if they come down on anybody, chances are it'll be you. And so let me teach you a few things. I mean, from where I sit, if it causes that much attention from the Black Lodge, we must be on to something.
I tend to think of the UFO mystery as being like the occult mystery schools. Okay, they can be physical, but they're not always physical. There's more threads to pull on than that.
The synchronicities will drive you absolutely crazy.
Ready to go back to the Black Lodge? Here's part two.
We're talking about the authentic tradition there. That comes up quite a bit in the Black Lodge book, too. The HB and the Hermetic Brotherhood of Luxor is one that's translated differently, but that seems to kind of be like a starting point for a lot of modern occultism, right? That you see as more the authentic tradition.
Yeah, I think that is authentic. I think some of the offspring of the HBL, that's easy to say.
Well, they took it different ways, right? Like Blavatsky would be that, or the Golden Dawn would kind of be offshoots of the teachings of the HBFL, right?
Blavatsky got thrown out of the HBFL. Her and I think Colonel Olcott, if I'm not mistaken, they were in Cairo before they got on the India trip, creating, unbeknownst to them, the war between India and Pakistan and Bangladesh ongoing.
Oh, no.
Stay tuned, because they got into Indian nationalism along with their version of the, they call the secret chiefs the Ascended Masters, or the Great White Brotherhood, blah, 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 blah. Well, in Egypt, they were running a different scam. I mean, doing a different form of enlightenment, which was trans-channeling. That was the spirit of that particular period of time. I mean, the source of the HBFL is, as the name implies, Egyptian, ancient Egyptian, not modern Egyptian. And they were under the tutelage of a guy who was an authentic member. I would assume he was a believer in the Coptic Orthodox Church, which has its own pope and its own following in Egypt. It's sort of a survival. When the Muslim horde swept in, there were still some Christian devotees there, and they formed basically their own Eastern branch of Christianity. The HBFL had some Christian mysticism laced with ancient Egyptian magic. He thought Blavatsky was running a scam or whatever, but they got thrown out. I'm abbreviating what was a long process, but they took off. Talked to the secret chiefs, which I don't doubt that they did, and decided to become involved with Indian nationalism. Actually, and this is not well known outside of Theosophical circles, they formed the Theosophical Society in New York. They are definitely not the Hermetic Brotherhood of Light or the Hermetic Order of Light. It's always had women in it. In fact, if you go from Paulus Metamon, the Coptic magician, to P.V. Randolph, they may have known one another because Randolph did the grand tour of Europe and the Levant and Egypt, went back to
Okay.
Europe and came back here and founded all kinds of things.
I always wondered how Randolph figured into it, but that makes sense if he met him on.
By the time the then leaders of the HBL were in Scotland on Loch Ness, coincidentally, presumably, not at Crowley's house. He didn't have a house at that point. He was still in diapers. But
SJ and I both have pieces of that house.
It's true.
Boleskine house. Yeah, we have ashes and slate from the roof in our possession.
any
Yeah.
house that has burned down twice in recent history has angered the Thelemic gods and must be abolished, and a new order of things comes in. Believe me, I was a psychic friend for 5 years, 3,000 clients, and no complaints, almost.
Okay.
That's better than Miss Cleo did.
Yeah, Miss Cleo probably read a script. Psychic friends, we had no script.
Did you meet Dionne Warwick?
I worked for Dionne.
Did you have lunch on Tuesdays?
No, we did not have lunch on Tuesdays. But when that infomercial, that half-hour long Johnny Carson goes psychic was on, I worked the graveyard shift. That's when my phone rang off the hook. So
All us insomniacs. Yeah.
they gave me the extension 6616. So one time I went to sign in. It was just like punching a clock. And they said, welcome, extension 666.
What?
Yes, that happened to me for real.
The number of the beast.
In those days when they wanted me to do a tarot reading, I used the what's called the Crowley deck. It's actually
Yeah.
it's a very rich deck, but it was not his artwork. It was an acolyte's artwork. The beginnings of the Theosophical Society were a mixture of real and unreal elements. But anyway, one of the guys that was involved in the HBL ran into some trouble, and Peter Davidson, who was at that time the frontal chief of the HBL, scrammed to North Georgia in the part that basically was just being settled then in the 1880s, mostly by Scots. Davidson was definitely in the authentic tradition. He also knew that he was no longer in Scotland. He was in rural North Georgia in the late 1800s, and he did not want to get lynched or burned at the stake or anything. So he, to use a term my son once used for a script he was writing and was told to God it up, he godded it up in order to stay ahead of things. So instead of the Theosophical magazine, Lucifer, he did the Morning Star. And it was called the Occult Magazine in Scotland, but that wouldn't have done real well in the wilds of White County, Georgia at that time.
Yeah.
Right.
So, now, what were the inner teachings of the HBFL? If you look into it, you'll find that the secret teachings were identical with the teachings of P.B. Randolph, printed, not published, because they were highly sexual magic. Another one of my books, In Nature. What was that book? The Grail Within?
Yeah.
It has a secret meaning known only to initiates and people who've read the book, which is available, I understand, from all of the usual outlets.
I was trying to purchase your Black Lodge book. I could not find it on Amazon. The Black Lodge ate it.
Yeah,
Yeah, the
it
Black
keeps getting removed. That's one of the many trials that we have gone through. I think Amazon UK has had a continuous problem with it's there and then it's not there, and it's there, it's not there. Now they've done that same thing with the Wikipedia piece on me, which I was never, uber happy with anyway, but it appears and disappears with different notations. I think some of that open source, but the people who really do the work there, they don't like me. They don't like anything metaphysical. And they especially don't like people like me that are critical of the magical order of which they are a member, which will remain the nameless order. So there's this battle that goes on about it. I don't know if it's up now or not, because I don't like to read stuff about me because
you're not a narcissist. Yeah.
no. I'm a media whore, but I'm definitely not someone who feels comfortable. Like I might listen to 5 minutes of this if you're kind enough to send me a link when this is
Sure.
on the air. Da, 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 da. Overture, curtain lights. This is it, the night of nights, and oh, what heights we'll hit. That was Bugs Bunny. On with the show. This is it.
This
Isn't
is
that right?
it.
That's
Yeah.
it.
That's the one.
I saw MAGA coming. It was out there waiting to happen. People who are living on this, their sources of information are less than reliable. Maybe it's because I've gotten old. Oh yeah, it said so on TikTok.
TikTok. I know. I refuse
Oh,
TikTok on principle.
I mean, they seem very anxious for people to have the TikTok app. And I don't mean to sound like a red baiter from the 50s, but this isn't the 50s. And if you have an entree to everyone's little box, you never know.
Yeah, that's where the war is. That's where the information is very useful. We give it up way too willingly these days.
I'm dependent on my phone, but I don't believe everything that I read.
Right.
On X.
Discernment.
Formerly Twitter.
Twatter.
Yeah.
Am I going to believe everything that is contained in a tweet? I like birds. I like birds that tweet. People, another matter.
The cardinal in the tree that I talked to, I believe that over half the stuff I read online. Secrets revealed. Yep.
Secrets revealed.
Black Lodge loves this stuff. They have no ideology. The book tries to make that point. They just want to set people against one another. Right. They ardently hope that the world will get sufficiently pissed that it will launch nuclear weapons and wipe the planet out. Their high initiates being non-corporeal. They don't stand to lose anything if the planet blows up. They just go on to wherever else.
And the most ironic part of this situation is you've got all the conservative Christians yelling about all the witches and the occult people with their death cult. They can't wait for Sky Jesus to come and rapture us all as we're like they're ready for the nukes to fly. And it's literally exactly the same bullshit that the dark side is doing from the opposite side. It's the same flavor. And people are it's like, hello, wake up.
So does that mean the Black Lodge is winning? Because it really kind of seems like they're winning.
That's why the book is not about the Great White Brotherhood, the secret chiefs. It's focused on the Black Lodge. Because for years I thought sooner or later, assuming I'm still around, I will do a third volume because this book is best, and honestly, this is not a plug. It's best read with the two previous books, Secret Cipher of the Euthanaut and Secret Rituals of the Men in Black. It makes more sense, and we use the cipher in the book, not as overtly, but it's there if you want to look for it. So it's a better read if you've already read those. So it's kind of addressed to that, but it's standalone too. I felt that times were getting sufficiently dark that focusing on the Black Lodges, I put it, knowledge is a very good antiseptic. And boy, do we need an antiseptic now. So I went into some of the worst case scenarios, the Maury Island thing, which is part of a bigger picture. And I think maybe for the first time I go into that. And then the darkness involved in the contactee movement from Pelly's silver shirts all the way up to present day groups that are devoted to the Lemurians in Mount Shasta. And not that everybody that goes to Mount Shasta is a fascist, but I mean, there are equivalents everywhere in the world at this point.
I know what you mean.
I mean, the Vril Society and the Tula Group are real things, but half of the stories that you hear about them come from a modern German neo-Nazi group that uses the story as a recruitment tool all over the world. And they're doing real well. I hear Adam Waffen is, somebody told me it's a big thing here in Atlanta. Well, Atlanta's a very big city, but still.
So they're also infiltrating the military and police organizations.
The first person I heard that said anything about that using the general Grand Lodge mailing list of that occult order that I was in was the only Jewish fascist I've ever known, the late unlimited Jim Wasserman, my arch enemy in that particular organization. But he was pushing this organization that he said, oh, it's very thelemic. They follow Liber Oz, blah, 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 at Fort Bragg, which I think they're in the process of renaming. But the point is, he was not military. He's probably the only person, and I feel a little guilt about this, but he's the only person that I was actually happy when I heard he died, because he had some kind of strange immunity in that organization. I mean, he was the highest level initiate, although he had gotten rushed through degrees, but that doesn't say anything about your ethics. And he wrote a book called The Slave Shall Serve, which is a quote from Liber Alba Legis. What can I say? He was a trumpeter. I have many criticisms of that organization, but it is not a racially bigoted group. That's not where its problem is. In fact, it's mostly people who are probably California liberals, God help them. But he was not a California liberal. He was a New York drunk, bad guy. The reason I didn't like him was because he ran a scam inside the organization. I flagged it because that was my duty. I'm trying not to be too specific here, but basically he was running a scam on this third party. And the third party was not a friend of mine either, but the chief Kuba, who happened to work in the same office building as him, stopped him. And he never, ever forgave that. But that was so typical of his way of operating. Back to the Black Lodge, of which he was probably a card-carrying member.
That's always been my biggest problem, though, sincerely, with secret magical groups. I've been invited to join a couple of covens and things, and I respect the secrecy of oath-bound traditions and whatnot, but I just can't get past taking an oath to something that I don't have the full picture for. It just doesn't feel right to me. Maybe I got trust issues, I'm missing the ticket, but the more that I find out how layered that this stuff is, kind of feeling pretty good about that decision, because it seems like it would be difficult to really tease out some of this because it's so layered.
Very, very political. The reason that people, presumably, if a magical organization is dedicated to enlightening its members. The most enlightened members you would expect would be at the top of the organization if it has a hierarchy at all. It's not true, at least in my experience. There's no correlation that I have seen between the level of official initiations, the nice certificates that you're not supposed to show anybody, and the level of attainment in the real sense. There are beginners who are far more enlightened than the exalted chiefs, and that's not the way it's supposed to be. The Black Lodge does that better than any of the supposedly white light organizations, because they have, this information is somewhat dated, but I think that it probably, if it isn't literally true anymore, it's true somewhere. They have 3 schools for people that show magical potential in Europe. This is covered in the book, but our information is of necessity the way it was, not necessarily the way it is. I mean, they may have maybe moved, maybe changed the names, whatever. These schools taught the basic rudiments of magical work, but they also at each level looked for people who might be candidates for the work of the Black Lodge. And having been a recruiter for the magical organization I was a part of, you get people like that. You get people who are looking for power. The guy I was initiated with turned out to be a literal Nazi. The clue was he had on his belt, he had swastika, and it was not a Buddhist swastika either. It was an authentic piece of Nazi regalia. And it turned out he really was a Nazi and thought he was joining a Nazi organization. And
Wow.
as the lodge master of that time said, boy, did he come to the wrong place. But I could see why, from the outside, thanks to people like the late Mr. Wasserman, it might look like something that a neo-Nazi might be attracted to. They are mostly like that. There are some. You mentioned Wiccan groups. Wicca has no central body. There's no Wiccan Pope. A couple of people that have tried to be, but there isn't. Every coven, theoretically, is its own institution. The position of leader of the coven is through initiation to the 3rd degree. And after someone reaches that level, they're charged with going out and creating their own coven. And that kind of decentral, almost Frank Herbert-like golden path is close enough to the syndicalism that I espouse that I think that's a good thing. On the other hand, there's always the risk that you'll be inducted into a coven that has an authoritarian leader who is jealous of the position, and that's something to get out of as soon as you realize it. I've known that type, and I've known people who are absolutely sincere, and they're looking for somewhere to spiritually ground themselves in these unsettled times. And that's as good a place as any to start off. Thing is, it can go very wrong. What I advocate is free illuminism, which is there are probably more free illuminists at this point than there are any of these organizations individually. I'm sure collectively there are more people in the authoritarian hierarchical, we'll call them, groups. But free illuminists, basically, if they come to me and say, can I start a lodge? I say, sure. How much does it cost? Nothing. I would appreciate it if you would send me a self-addressed stamped envelope, though, and your proposed charter, And unless it says, something really, really bad, I will sign it, seal it, and send you on your way. And you can let me know what you're doing or report what you're doing to your group or report it on the Worldwide Free Illuminist Facebook page, which I happen to be the editor of now. Basically, it's an open forum. Anybody that subscribes to it, there's like 3 rules. Don't say anything racist. Be respectful of other people's opinions, but nothing ideological whatsoever. And that's where it stands now. However, I think the vast majority of Free Illuminist local groups not only don't answer to me, they don't answer to anybody. And that's by design. Leto II decided that he would cast the universe out to the universe in order that the human race would be able to continue no matter what bullshit thing people in some places would do. And not only that, but locals can charter other locals. So there are probably locals I have never heard of. I didn't start this thing. It was started by a guy who was disaffected from what was then the Ecclesia Nostra Catholica, Inc., a separate organization. Once I got involved, I made it open to anyone who came in peace, ill-defined, and that is deliberately so. Sort of the opposite of the Black Lodge.
We love it. Check that out for sure. We will put the link to the Facebook stuff in our show notes so people can find you there and interact with you there, because that sounds amazing.
Right after you read my book, because you don't want to become part of something that is supervised by some nut. Instead, you get all this stuff. 300 and some odd pages from Ronco. The Black Lodge strikes. Pictures from if you want to invoke demons. What was my favorite section? The Transfiguration of Furkan and Ramu. In the print edition, also available in Kindle for a much lower price. The only book that I have out, by the way, that does. It starts on page 131.
There you go, everyone.
Your hymn book, page 131. Adamski's Acolytes in Racy, and it will be very educational, I think, for just about
Page
everybody.
131. Put 131 in the cipher. We'll see what it means.
Yeah, well, I get really interesting things with the cipher. Well, back then, in the contactee movement, people almost always were given or took the funny names that I originally thought this might be useful to use the cipher on. And indeed they are. You don't see that too much now. You don't see spaceship, in quotes, landing, and out comes the blonde, blue-eyed alien who says, "Hi, George Adamski. I'm blonde and blue-eyed, and my name is Orthon," which, when you do the cipher value, is the same value as Jesus, and sort of looks like that painting you will see in a lot of people's homes in the South, what I call the Breck version of Jesus. What?
How do you feel about Elvis?
I haven't seen him lately, so I guess he has moved on.
I think he's a tulpa now or an egregore.
All I know is there are rumors that the tomb in Memphis is empty.
Elvis's tomb?
There are, yes, Elvis. At Graceland. Can't make a better name yet. And that there are more post-mortem sightings of Elvis than those reported in the Gospels of Jesus. Make of it what you will.
Praise his holy name.
Elvis has left the planet. You know, I had the 45 of Love Me Tender and Hound Dog on opposite sides. I don't know which was the A and which was the B. It doesn't matter at this point. I had that for years. If I had it now, I would be a wealthy man instead of the poor man who just has his Social Security and the little bit I get from my books to feed myself and my vast family of followers over here. Little John and Big John and the
We
Johnson
thought maybe
family.
you would have run into Elvis and like your esoteric knowledge, because he was a big seeker, especially towards the end of his life when he was really cracked out. He was reading a lot of really, like, he read the Prophet, and he was all into the numerology, Chiro's Book of Numbers.
He
all that
died as he
stuff.
lived. Sitting
On the throne?
John, on the throne, reading one of those books that was one of the hip books to read.
But what's your favorite Elvis song? That's important.
In the Ghetto.
Really? Okay.
That's a good one.
It is a good one, yeah.
It's more sincere than a lot of, I mean, he didn't write his own music, but that was a bold step at the time. And it's a good song. And it says something more than hound dog.
Hey, little mama.
There ain't nothing but a hound dog. Just quack it over. You ain't caught a rap. Well, a hound dog is supposed to be a hunting dog. See, it's esoteric, just like everything else. Love me tender. And then when...
Ding, we win! My goal was to have you sing Elvis. Okay, thank you.
Love me tender. Love me sweet. Never let me go.
There you
People
go.
are not going to buy my book now for sure.
They better buy your book, or they're going to have to fight us.
Life complete. And I love you so true.
Come on, AP, come on.
For my darling, I love you. And I always will, along with all those girls in Vegas that I don't like to talk about.
Excellent.
Thank you for that rendition. It warmed my heart forever.
You know, that tune is from an old gospel song. And it was one of President Eisenhower's favorite songs. And when he died, they played that melody at his funeral.
Really?
And I watched that on the little black and white TV of that period. And I thought, why are they playing Love Me Tender?
So other than Facebook, what's the best way for people to get in touch with you? Do you like the Twitter? Do you not like the Twitter?
I have found, first of all, I'm on Twitter, as AP can testify, every day, just about.
We're all addicted.
Yeah.
Other platforms, you know, like shoes platform, is just mirror what I put on Twitter. Something about the brevity of tweets has inspired my muse, and I'm much funnier on Twitter than I am anywhere else, and occasionally also insightful. So if you want to hear my blah, 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 blah after you read my books, come to my Twitter page and we'll tweet together. You'll say, I know the secret of reality. And I'll say, what is reality?
Nothing is real.
I discovered a few years ago that I know people have chatter in the skull, but I have music, songs, starting from World War I on, because my father, when I was a captive audience in the back of the Lincoln trying to sleep, he would break into song. His repertoire were World War I songs. Because he was
there.
yeah. And he would sing those, and he would sing probably now they're fade into history because they're not politically correct, but the entire Stephen Foster repertoire. Also, he would do Al Jolson songs and Eddie Cantor songs.
Oh boy.
And when we approach the Swanee River on our way to Miami every year, I would sort of cover my ears because he would go, way down upon the Swanee as we crossed the river, far, far. And then he would keep doing it, for mile after mile as he was flooring it with in a Lincoln. It starts to vibrate at 80. He would do 100. So we're, just trying. And finally, after he got sufficiently bored, he would start to do the same song in pseudo Yiddish. There down upon the Schwanzee River. So I even know that by heart. This is the book that you need to read. God love you. You need to read it to fight the Black Lodge and find out why Hitler knew all those little gestures that made speaking an art form, because the Black Lodge taught him everything he knew.
Yeah, so definitely buy Allen's book. Buy all of Allen's books. He's got a bunch of them.
Yes. You were going to tell him about the last time you recorded. We got distracted.
Yeah. So first time we spoke for the Eternal Void, but with Jazz podcast. During our conversation, you talked about your time during the QBLH. And that was fresh in my memory when I went to a bookshop, my favorite bookstore called Gray Matter Books in Hadley, Massachusetts, because they always have a great collection of weird books. There's just a big sign that says Books of the Weird, and it's occult, it's UFOs, it's everything. And I came across this. I don't think I got a chance to tell you about it.
Oh, boy. Yeah, I've been trying to find a copy of that because if I remember correctly, I had a little bit to do with that. They ignore the spelling errors. I had nothing to do with editing. I barely can spell my own name.
You are in here, page 47.
Sora Ishtar's So Many Stars. Is that in there? See, that's the best explanation that was ever given, in my opinion, of using computers on the cipher.
Mm-hmm.
That's the person that introduced me to the cipher, no longer with us, unfortunately.
The one that you wrote is The Magical Child Revisited. What this does have in it that was of interest to me too is the special feature section on the New English Kabbalah, forming the basis of the secret cipher, as I understand it. So,
oh yeah. The grid page, so-called, with the diagonal and all that, that is what Jim Lees used to figure out the actual cipher, unlike Crowley, who was clueless on what it meant. And I don't know who drew the grid, but I think probably Crowley did. And the mark through the page is not accidental because it's referred to in the text. So I just call Liberal the code book.
Yeah, and I mean, that makes sense. The thing that stuck out to me here is that it says the English Kabbalah was discovered on November 26, 1976 by Jim Lees. Just a significant date for me personally, because at the time, and still, I've been looking into the broadcast intrusion by Ashtar Command in the south of England, which was exactly a year later. So it's directly a year before that, exactly to the day, a year before that broadcast intrusion from Ashtar Command. So,
well, if I'm right about Ashtar Command being part of or in league with the Black Lodge, then no wonder Lees had his epiphany on an anniversary of that, because clearly the cipher is to shed light on all of the occult and related mysteries, the paranormal, whatever. I am very wary of anything associated with Ashtar, considering I know what Ashtar historically has been.
right. Yeah, and I mean, that was also significant to me because I had been reading Secret Rituals of the Men in Black prior to finding this. So that
Oh
kind of
yeah,
tied into it, where you talk about Ashtar quite a bit in that one.
yeah.
So
I don't want people to think that anybody that's interested in the Ashtar communications are automatically bad people in league with the Black Lodge. Most of what is said is same sort of material you get from the Seth material, the raw
yeah,
material, and those are white light. But if something advertises itself as Ashtar or the name of any other demon doing transmissions, that is your one clue that you get that you're dealing with the dark side of the force.
you said in the book was be careful, like watch out for Ashtar based on the secret cipher things that you got out of it.
Oh yeah, I think I even translated the Latin description of the demon Ashtar, but could go even further back than that to Ashtaroth in ancient Babylon. And since Babylon was basically an extension of the Sumerian Empire,
Mhm.
maybe even back to Sumer. So it's a very old demonic force, which fits the
Right.
Black Lodge to a T.
That was a trail I was following, and when I hit these kinds of synchronicities, I was like, maybe it's time to back away from that one a little bit. I think it's time for cartoons now, because there have been points in looking into it where it's actually gotten it's kind of spooked me here and there.
The book to read on that is very old and not really a UFO book per se, or an occult book. In fact, it's sort of occult, anti-UFO. Is Festinger et al.'s When Prophecy Fails.
Okay.
It talks a great deal about the great disappointment.
Hmm.
They talk about a modern UFO millennial cult and the disillusionment that they had and how they reacted to that. What I used to say back then when I was just doing ufology, nothing else, you don't want to wind up standing on top of a hill at night, waving a flashlight, hoping the UFOs wave back to you. That's kind of the ultimate downer that you can, but
Yeah.
it's down a garden path that is deliberately there, and you don't want to go there. There are bad things and good things, but the worst thing I can say about the magical society I was involved with for 20 years is not something that happened to me or around me, but an unknown number of people, and I think it's in the thousands, maybe even the tens of thousands, that got involved, spent a little money, got the primary initiation, got disillusioned, and not only left the organization, but left interest in occultism and the entire spectrum of magic altogether. It's not like we're dealing with the entire population of the planet. Most people are exoteric and not interested in this stuff to begin with. We have a pool of people, an unknown number, but respectable number, that are interested to one degree or another. Some interested enough to join an organization or an affiliation. Some that want to work on their own, but that read the materials. And then you have possibly a larger group of people that were interested and got disillusioned by this organization or by others. And that is unforgivable. Well, bless
All
you
right.
both. And
Thank
bless
you.
your audience, those that buy the book, those that don't.
You if you don't buy the book.
You need to read. God love you. You need to read it to fight the Black Lodge.
If you're still with us at this point.
Yeah, if you're still here, right as we were wrapping up talking with our friend Allen fucking Greenfield, the new high priest of the cult of the Holy Donut, AP brought up a personal synchronicity.
Brought it up, and you're just like, oh,
Yeah.
you want to just show him that book, right? Like,
I just blurted it out. Like, we're done. We're finishing. We're like, thanks for joining us. It was really fun. And wrapping it all up, talking about Secrets of the Black Lodge, which y'all should support Alan. This is a nice thick book. I bought the Kindle version at first, and I really struggled with it because having this and the cipher side by side, it makes this, I think, so much easier to understand. So recommend the hard copies if you're going to do this. You don't need to purchase this one because this content is included in here. But if you have the original Secret Cipher, you need this one. This is number 2.
The third part of the Secret Cipher of the Euphonauts trilogy. But
and it is thicker than the other 2 books combined.
The original Secret Ciphers of the Euphonauts, pretty much once Hellier came out, all the old used copies were bought up. So they had to reprint it, and they put the first 2 books in one volume. So if you're looking online and you find the Secret Cipher of the Euphonauts, if it says the complete, that one there, then that's both of those volumes. So just to clear that up for people if they're uninitiated, as it were. But getting to the heart of this, the Secret Cipher itself is a version of the New Aeon English Kabbalah, right? So that's kind of at the center of our little sync storm around this here. So toward the end, where you graciously prompted me to bring up the book that I had found, as I had said, if you're watching this now, I guess about probably 20 minutes ago, I had interviewed Alan before. And during the course of our conversation, he had mentioned his time with the Hermetic and Alchemical Order of QBLH. And really, like a week or 2 later, I go to my favorite bookstore, parsing through things. I see this on the shelf, the Sistrum, and I'm like, what's that? I always pick out small volumes that look like they're just, because it's always often something interesting. And then I see right there, it's like QBLH, and I'm like, oh, so I bought this naturally. And I would have had no idea what it was had I not just literally spoken to Alan personally. As we were talking in the conversation, I came to realize that the English Kabbalah was discovered by an English occultist named James Lees, November 26, 1976, 1 year to the day before the Ashtar broadcast intrusion in South England. So that's been a long running thing for me. And around the time I interviewed him as well, I was reading or rereading Secret Rituals of the Men in Black, because I had read the Secret Cipher of the Euphonauts way before that. And when I came to that section on Ashtar, parts of it kind of freaked me out, because I'm just like, all right, so he's very much warning against the dealing with Ashtar here. It's been noted before that, Ashtar is a version of Astaroth, the demon, and that was brought up by John Keel, among others. Kind of gave me pause at that time. But like a synchronicity like this one really made me feel like, okay, am I like tinkering with real things that real powers that I don't understand here?
So you go down this deep Ashtar dive that was linked to Rex Detta, our friend Rev over in England, like really digging into this. Unbeknownst to each other, you're digging into Ashtar and I'm digging into Ishtar, which we've already kind of talked about before. And we're all kind of like, that's interesting. And then you found this book that has all this stuff, the Sistrum.
Yeah, the Sistrum is well, I mean, it has a lot of magical associations, but in particular to things you were looking at with ancient Egyptian magic and symbols and architecture, right? Having to do with the bricks and everything. I was expecting this to just be kind of a fun little synchro for Alan. I was just wanted to bring it up and be like, hey, look at this blast from the past that you're in, your old magical order that you used to be in. And he was like, I wasn't expecting the expression on his face. He's like, I've been looking for that. He really there was something he really wanted in here. And he mentioned that his friend and a woman that went on to become the outer head of the QBLH Soror Ishtaria.
Oh, praise Ishtar.
So yeah, here we got the Ishtar thing again, because Ishtaria. I figured after we had the chat, I'm like, I know that I had read this. When I first bought it, I read it, but I didn't put together which part of the book he was talking about. So I went through and I kind of scanned each page to send over to him because I knew he'd appreciate it. But here we go. This is all about the early attempts to take the English Kabbalah and put it into a computer to run through the different ciphers, right? So you're taking it as a grid, and she had different ways of mapping it in 3D shapes in the computer software to run the cycle. And the first shape that she tries, or one of the first, is a torus or a toroidal shape, or as it says here, the header eggs and donuts. So we got the donut right there. Yeah, the early attempts at computerization with the English Kabbalah cipher, which forms the basis of the secret cipher of the Euphonauts, is of course a donut. It's a 3D shaped donut grid. It turned out not to be the best shape, and that's where the egg comes in, because she eventually ended up using an egg. But this goes on to describe how the classical English Kabbalah has a cycle of 11, and this was something that Frater Akkad had determined. The 26-pointed star, you'd go all the way around, assign letters to
Pointed
each point.
star. Where have we heard that before?
Well, I mean, all stars have points, right? But
Yeah.
this would be the 26-pointed star right there. So that's a lot of points. It's one for each letter of the alphabet, right? So Frater Akkad decided that you'd move in cycles of 11. So then the order of the letters would be like A and then L, and then you'd move again 11 letters from there. And then that becomes your cipher base. So, I mean, ciphers are really at the heart of a lot of occultism, also espionage, fraternal organizations, all of these things. It's a way of encoding things. But what's wild about that is that you're moving in cycles of 11 around a 26-pointed star. So again, you have 11, 26. And that's the date that we're looking at. The cipher was discovered on November 26th. So 11/26 is an important birthday for someone in my life as well. But yeah, so this has always been kind of a significant thing for me. And like a lot of birthdays play into this whole thing. Like Rev's birthday is actually on the anniversary of the first time George Van Tassel channeled Ashtar. The Ashtar Command. So I'm gonna probably have to just like write an actual history of Ashtar, because I don't really think it's been done. Like I've asked around people in ufology circles and things like that, and I don't think that there's been an actual, like, a book specifically about that.
I know you got some big theories about Ashtar and Ishtar that are fascinating. That definitely should be written down.
Yeah, and I mean the thing that has really kind of prevented further further investigation and writing about this is that, like, some of these synchronicities really are kind of scary. Like, it kind of freaks you out when it happens. And I had a real hard time with this maybe 2 years ago. There was a
I remember.
podcast that came out called The Interruption, where this recent university grad in England, Tommy something or other, he had a YouTube channel and everything. He blew up on YouTube for a video about biblically accurate angels, because that was
Nice.
in the zeitgeist at the time. That was kind of memeified. So he kind of hit the gold mine with that. So I don't know, we need to find our biblically accurate angel. So Ishtar, Fat Elvis, if you're listening,
Praise your holy names.
make us go viral for something stupid, and allow us to, because you got this kid that's like straight out of college, and he didn't even need to apply his degree for anything. He just like, oh well, now I'm just a YouTube person that I make a ton of money off that. He reached out to me, and this has happened multiple times, because His whole podcast was about the broadcast intrusion in southern England in 1977, and which is something I've been looking into. Again, that's the jumping off point for all the research that I do on this subject. And I've been quietly doing it for the last couple of years. And this guy's podcast is part of the reason. He reached out to me about it, and I ended up being on that show. Incidentally, when I first posted about this on Twitter, when I started looking into it, is when Steve reached out to me, and he and I became pretty good friends. Around that time, it was one of the first times I got like a comment from you and became aware of you on Twitter, was when I posted about that. Like there's one single tweet where I just tweeted about this weird event in 1977, and it ended
The
up becoming,
hypersigil was received.
yeah, like two of my all-time best friends that I've made online ever, you and Steve, are like tied to that, you know.
Right.
And over the course of years, people have reached out to me just based on me having written about it at all. And I think my writing has come a long way since I wrote those early posts. But if somebody's curious about it and they start Googling, my posts come up, and then they end up contacting me about it. So that's what this guy Tommy did. Incidentally, that's also how I became aware of the Nonsense Bazaar. Like Willow tracked me down
Mhm.
so talk to me about it. So this guy had me on his show. He and Steve and I talked, or Reverend Steve Stardog, the three of us talked for over an hour, right? We ended up having our conversation cut down to like maybe 15 minutes, stretched out between two episodes. And he really just kind of made us sound like a bunch of assholes. He was super dismissive of us. He referred to me as an amateur blogger, which, to be fair, at the time, but he was like super dismissive of me. He kept hammering on the idea that I never looked into UFO religions, and he was a religious studies major at university. So I'll save you all the trouble of listening to this awful podcast, because it was a real slog to get through. He ended up figuring out that it was this one guy that was an inventor that pulled off this whole thing. He may or may not be right. Like, and to me, it doesn't really matter, because to me, the thread I'm following is entirely different. In all likelihood, the broadcast intrusion did not come from beyond the stars, from Ashtar Command. Sure, there probably was a more terrestrial source, and this guy might have found the right guy. That doesn't change any of the other stuff around it that's highly weird, and the synchronicities that were happening with me, like the story of Rex Dutta and the story of Steve working with Rex. Around the time this English Kabbalah was discovered was around the time Steve met Rex, like I talked to him this morning about. And it's making me wonder if Rex knew Jim Lee's. He may have. Steve has all along been telling me that Rex had involvement with people that were in the OTO. But during that time, when that podcast was out, it was like one or two episodes would drop a week, and I'd listen to them, and it was like a slog to get through them. Like I said, I think I'm in one episode, but they pull quotes from me for others, and he's directly using my research and not crediting me for it.
Oh, lovely. So he's a real prize.
He's lifting like verbatim lines from the blog I wrote where I talked about Bob Short. So it's kind of like, wow. Wow.
No, we'll just add him to the smite list. That's fine.
No, it was just kind of shitty, like to go out of your way to get a hold of me and talk to me once, and then I'm like, yeah, just keep me in the loop, man, if you have any other questions. Like, this is an example of a weird shit that would happen. I was doing my job, and I like to be ambiguous about what my job is. I was at a bar. My job involves me going to different places, and a lot of businesses, and I'm in the business for a little while they're not open often. And I'm in this bar room that I've been in a million times, both as a customer and in a professional capacity.
Just admit you're a time cop.
So I was time copping around in this bar, and I'm grumbling about this podcast because I'm just like, freaking guy. There's a video game in the bar, like an arcade game, big arcade console. And it's made to look like one of the old ones you'd see in the arcades, but it has a whole bunch of games loaded onto it. Like it has Galaga, it has a bunch of those. And this console had always been there. as much as I can remember. And it came on automatically when they flipped the breakers to turn the lights on. It would come on, but there was never any sound. The sound was always turned off. And while I'm working, I hear, "Beware, I live.
Beware, I live.
I am Ashtar," you know?
I am Sinister.
And I'm like, what the? I literally just heard a voice saying, like, "Beware, I'm Ashtar." Like, where is this coming from? So I had to go over to the video game console, and it wasn't Ashtar. A 2-bit audio on those old games from far away sounded like Ashtar, but
I hunger, coward.
I remember you told me, you're like, dude, I gotta peace out on the Ashtar stuff for a while. Like, I had to take a break. I'm getting a little freaked out. I'm not even ready to talk about it. And I was like, okay, that's cool.
well, because like just explaining it to you while talking to you, it's like hard to explain. Typing this out like in chats, because that's how we talk most of the time. Most of our
Right.
whole relationship has just been
Right.
so
Just shit talk all day long.
shit talk, shit posts, messages, private messages that'll get us canceled if they ever
Cat
get leaked.
photos.
So I mean, I had to do exactly what Alan suggests people do in those cases, which is go watch a bunch of cartoons. That is solid advice right there, because if you start feeling yourself slip, the thing stops making sense and starts scaring you, like, yeah, it's time for like a Mel Brooks movie. You spend some time with your family, go touch grass. It is pretty outstanding that, you know, to think that Alan would have been looking for this one specific
That you happened to pick up.
yeah, I mean, it was within a week or two of interviewing the first time. And I mean, yeah, a small bookstore out in Hadley, Massachusetts.
But that's what you were talking about. Like, all the pieces had to line up for this to happen. Like, it was cool you got the book, and it was, you know what I mean? But it's like this last nod of him being like, whoa, you have what? I've been looking for that. And like, the person's name is Star Ishtara. Are you kidding me? Nothing is real.
And then the associations between Ishtar and Ashtar as like a namesake, you know. In keeping with the Black Lodge thing, I was what I'm thinking is much like the Comte de Saint-Germain, or Saint Germain, as people say. There could be, to use Twin Peaks as an example, a dangerous double. So you could have simultaneously have the same name having a good aspect and a bad aspect, right?
Right.
So the Black Lodge's goal is to infiltrate and appropriate and confuse matters on these things. Or maybe it's just time to watch some cartoons. I don't know. In some way or another, the English Kabbalah, its discovery is somehow tied to this, because the English Kabbalah led to the secret cipher of the Euphonauts, led to Hellier, which
Led to our friendship.
our friendship right there. Yeah. So
All of us. Yep.
which led to us starting the show, which led to us talking to Alan Greenfield so that I can show him this thing, which led me to the realization that maybe the English Kabbalah is tied to the broadcast intrusion in 1977.
There it is. That's why I'm so passionate about supporting authors. We need to support authors like Alan, because they might have one book that gets really popular, you know, in a TV series, and everybody kind of forgets about him. And this is his life's work. This is his life's work, and he puts a ton out there for all of us to enjoy. So if you're in a position to, if you're interested in this and you enjoy his thoughts, buy his books, support his work, visit his Facebook group, yell at him on Twitter. He loves to hear from people and loves to talk about this stuff. He told us wants to hear from people and their thoughts about this book. Give them freaking credit, for God's sake. Give people credit for their ideas. It makes me insane, especially when they're so generous with their time and their ideas. Like most of the authors in this weird stuff are, from Alan to John Tenney, Stephanie Quick, you know, all these people that they're so generous with their time and energy. The least you could do is not steal their freaking books.
Pay for the books, please.
No. Or get them from the library.
But certainly, like, cite your sources. When you're writing a thing, you can say where your ideas came from. And I mean, I have seen my own ideas parroted in different ways. I'm pretty new compared to like Alan or like Tenny or like people that we know and talk to and I look up to.
This gets a little bit deeper. So one final little nod here. The guy that did the voice for Sinistar, his name was John Doremus. He also worked for WGN in Chicago. You know, where the Max Headroom intrusion happened.
I can hear her purring. Hi, Lucy, baby angel murder muffin, lovey. Stay tuned because at some point we will get to with everybody. We have a riveting theory that all cow cats are jinn.
Look at these.
That's a
bees.
jinn right there. He is tamed an evil jinn. Look at her laser eyes. And her beard, her tiny little beard.
Oh, she's staring right at you.
She knows I love her. Look at her little ears. Oh my god. She's such a little chub. I just love her.
Yeah.
Welcome to the podcast. It's me baby talking to AP's cat and dog for half an hour. I'm absolutely unable to speak to an animal in a normal voice. She's such a baby.
I know.
So clearly
like this. I'm the only one that can get away with this too.
Clearly you know the secrets of the Black Lodge because you tamed a jinn.
A jinn and a goblin here, and they like to fight with each other. So
that's how it goes.